does not work. The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Here.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Present.
Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. 9 present, you have quorum.
A quorum being present, we will be led in an opening reflection by Ben Molina, Chairman of the Hispanic Leadership.
Morning. Today I'd like to read a reflection that was prepared by Doctora Gabriela Romero, who unfortunately could not be here today. As we gather today, I'd like to share a poem by Gustavo Perez Fermat, a Cuban-American professor and poet, titled Bilingual Blues. The poem beautifully expresses the complexities of identity, bilingualism, and feeling of caught between worlds. Soy un ajiaco de contradicciones. I have mixed feelings about everything. Name your tema, I'll hedge. Name your cerca, I'll straddle it, like a cubano. I have mixed feelings about everything. Soy un ajiaco de contradicciones. Vex, hex, complexed, hyphenated, oxygenated, illegally alienated. Psycho soy, cantando voy. You say tomato, I say tu madre. You say potato, I say pototo. Let's call the whole un hueco, the thing a cosa. And if the cosa goes into the hueco, consider yourself en casa. Consider yourself part of the family. Soy un ajiaco de contradicciones, un puré de impurezas, a little square from Rubik's Cuba, que nadie nunca acoplará. Cha-cha-cha. In this work, Perez reflects on the experience of living between cultures and languages, a reality that resonates deeply with many in our community. He moves seamlessly between English and Spanish, lamenting and celebrating this duality, just as his poem transitions from the melancholy blues to the joyous cha-cha-cha. This duality also parallels the history of jazz and blues in St. Louis, which brought together different musical traditions, blending them into something uniquely harmonious. The apparent discord of cultures, languages, and identities eventually merge into a beautiful and rich united expression. Much like our diverse city, the work of the Hispanic Leaders Group, this board, and the city of St. Louis, which strives to bring together a multitude of voices for a more harmonious and inclusive community. Thank you.
Any introduction of honored guests? Any introduction of honored guests? Alderwoman from the 10th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I would first like to have as my honored guest, I don't see her in the gallery this day, but my former, well, today is her last day, my legislative assistant, Cynthia Watson. Since this will be her last day today, I wanted to have her as my honored guest and wish her Godspeed and wherever the next journey takes her. And then my second honored guest, and I would always absolutely ask for a moment of silence at the end, is for a person that gave 37 years to the city of St. Louis. So as an honored guest, I would like to have our Parks and Rec Center, most especially Cherokee and Woe Center families, but the entire city, generations of youth here in the city of St. Louis that he touched. And yesterday in the celebration of life, there was a testimony today because at Greater Paradise under the direction of Mike Tyler, it was standing room only, inside and outside. And so, Emmanuel Caldwell Preston, we honor you today. Thank you for 37 selfless years with a smile to Parks and Recreation, to the city of St. Louis. And we will continue to keep your family, your loved ones, and your work family in our prayers.
If we could please stand for a moment of silence.
Thank you.
Any further introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'd like to have Jason Speakerman from the Carpenters Union, as well as Dave Sweeney's pants.
Okay. Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. If we also could have one more moment of silence, there's a saying that goes, when it rains, it pours. And then after it pours on the other side is usually a rainbow. But right now, my family is going through several deaths that have happened this last week. My cousin, Trey, has just lost his father, Mr. Oliver. And then my other cousin on my mom's side, Aisha, has lost her second son. So the funeral of one of my family members is today, and then another one will be coming up. So if we can just please keep them in prayer and wrapped in love as they will be grieving. But eventually, like I say, that rainbow will come at some point.
Good. Please stand for a moment of silence. Any further introduction of honored guests? Any further introduction of honored guests? Alderwoman from the 11th.
Or two. They have put on various plays. Some of them they have come together collectively to write. They have a performance this morning. This is their third play at the O'Fallon Rec Center. So they are my honored guests, and break a leg.
Any further introduction of honored guests? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the approval of the minutes from Friday, September 13th, 2024.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we approve the minutes from Friday, September 13th, 2024.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 5th, that we approve the minutes from Friday, September 13th, 2024. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and has been placed in the Google Drive for your review. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Dutchtown Community Improvement District. The appointment of Danielle Fox, who resides in the 3rd Ward. I respectfully request your approval of this appointment. Sincerely, to Sharborough O. Jones, Mayor.
Alderman from the 3rd, you're recognized on Mayor Jones' appointment to the Dutchtown Community.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we accept the mayor's nomination to the Dutchtown Community Improvement Board.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 3rd, second by the Alderman from the 4th, that we approve Mayor Jones' appointment to the Dutchtown Community Improvement District. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Central West End South Special Business District. The appointment of Milton Rothschild, who reside in St. Louis County. I respectfully request your approval of this appointment. Sincerely, to Sharborough O. Jones, Mayor.
Alderman from the 9th, you're recognized on Mayor Jones' appointment to the Central West End Special Business District.
Thank you. I would move that we accept the mayor's appointment of Milton Rothschild to Central West End South Special Business District.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderman from the 5th, that we approve Mayor Jones' appointment to the Central West End Special Business District. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Anyone wish to take any bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendar? Anyone wish to take any bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendars? Seeing none, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill 98, sponsored by Alderwoman Boyd, an ordinance approving an award for $263,800 for the analysis of public health and public equity to the St. Louis Integrated Health Network, authorizing the execution of a grant agreement between the City of St. Louis by and through its Department of Health and St. Louis Integrated Health Network for the purpose of conducting an analysis of healthcare safety net network of providers and members organizations, authorizing certain actions by city officials and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 99, sponsored by Alderman Cone, An ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, and the Board of Public Service, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller of the City of St. Louis to enter into and execute the purchase sale agreement in the form as set in Exhibit A, attached hereto, incorporated herein, between the City and St. Louis County, authorizing the sale of certain St. Louis Lambert International Airport property parcels located within the city of Kinloch, Missouri, and St. Louis County for $40,000 containing a severability clause. Board Bill 100, sponsored by Alderman Cone, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing the transfer of $1 million from the Airport Development Fund to the Fund of Air Service Incentive Program at the St. Louis Lambert International Airport for fiscal years 2025 through 2027, providing for supplemental transfer containing a severability clause. Board Bill 101, sponsored by Alderman Cone, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, providing for financial incentives for new airlines and air services at St. Louis Lambert International Airport, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 102, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, an ordinance approving a petition of owners of real property seeking the creation and establishment of the Downtown North St. Louis Community Improvement District, finding a purpose for the creation and establishment of the Downtown North St. Louis Improvement District, Inc., containing the severability and emergency clause. Board Bill 103, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard and President Green and Alderwoman Velazquez. An ordinance repealing Chapter 8.22 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis to eliminate certain regulations for barbershops. Board Bill 104, sponsored by Alderwoman Schweitzer, President Green, Alderman Browning, and Alderwoman Velazquez. An ordinance repealing Ordinance 70924, codified Chapter 25.74 of the Revised Code of Ordinance of the City of St. Louis, and enacting in lieu thereof a new ordinance to be known as the Utility Coordination Policy for the purpose of outlining coordination and repair standards for construction, excavation, and other work that disrupts access to the right-of-way, including vehicle and pedestrian travel, providing exemptions for emergency maintenance work. That's the extent of first reading of board bills.
Reference to Committee of Board Bills.
The following board bills were, to the Health and Human Development Committee, Board Bill 98, to Transportation and Commerce, Board Bill 99, 100, and 101, to HUD's, Board Bill 102, to the Special Committee on Reducing Red Tape, Board Bill 103, and to Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee, Board Bill 104. That's the extent of reference to Committee of Board Bills.
Second reading report of standing committees.
The following board bill was reported out of HUD's with the due pass recommendation. Board Bill 65, sponsored by Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Sanye, Alderman Cone, Alderman Browning, Alderwoman Schweitzer, and Alderman Aldridge. An ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated December 13th, 2022 for the Jeff Vanderloo Scattered Sites redevelopment area. The following board bills were reported out of Public Infrastructure with the due pass recommendation. Board Bill 67, sponsored by Alderman Browning, pursuant to ordinance number 70333, as amended by ordinance number 71394, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to install speed humps to calm the flow of traffic on various blocks in the 9th Ward. Board Bill 68, sponsored by Alderwoman Velazquez, pursuant to ordinance number 70333, as amended by ordinance number 71394, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to install speed humps to calm the flow of traffic on the 2000 block of 39th Street, 2100 block of 39th Street, 3800 block of Detanti Street, 3900 block of Connecticut Avenue, 4000 block of Connecticut Avenue, 3500 block of Giles Avenue, 3100 block of Gurney Avenue, 3600 block of Gustine Avenue, 3700 block of Gustine Avenue, 4000 block of Hartford Street, 4000 block of Merrimack Street, 3100 block of Portis Avenue, and the 4000 block of Wyoming Avenue. Board Bill 78, sponsored by Alderman Browning, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate above-surface, surface, and subsurface rights for vehicle, equestrian, and pedestrian travel in the western north-south alley in City Block 5043, as bounded by Arco Avenue, Taylor Avenue, Oakland Avenue, Kings Highway Boulevard in the City of St. Louis, Missouri, as hereinafter described in accordance with the Charter Authority, and in conformity with Section 1.4 of Article 21 of the Charter, and imposing certain conditions on such vacation. Board Bill 79, sponsored by Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Schweitzer, Alderman Browning, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Keys, and Alderwoman Velazquez. An ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Tuskegee Airman Way pursuant to ordinance number 68937 shall begin at the intersection of Chestnut Street and North 13th Street and run west on Chestnut Street to the intersection of Chestnut Street and North 14th Street. Board Bill 81 as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Schweitzer, pursuant to ordinance number 70333, as amended by ordinance number 71394, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to install speed humps to calm the flow of traffic on various blocks in the First Ward. Board Bill 94, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to install speed humps to ordinance 70333, as amended by ordinance number 71394, to calm the flow of traffic on the 6100 block of Kingsbury, the 300 and 400 block of DePere Avenue, and the 1300 block of Bayard Avenue. Board Bill 97, sponsored by Alderman Browning, an ordinance establishing a stop site at the intersection of Swan Avenue and Taylor Avenue, containing an emergency clause. The following board bills were reported out of Public Safety with the due pass recommendation. Board Bill 89, sponsored by Alderman Browning, Alderman Narayan, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderwoman Velazquez, Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Sanye, and Alderman Aldridge. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing St. Louis Treasurer's Office to accept a Cities of Financial Empowerment Fund Program grant of up to initial $75,000 plus a subsequent anticipated award up to $75,000 for project implementation by entering into a memorandum of understanding with the Cities of Financial Empowerment Fund, authorizing the expenditure of such funds to the extent received, authorizing contracts and other documents to expend such funds to the extent received, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 90, sponsored by Alderman Browning, Alderman Narayan, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderwoman Velazquez, Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Sanye, and Alderman Aldridge. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing the City Emergency Management Agency to accept a cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency state and local cybersecurity grant in the amount of $198,317.91 from the State of Missouri Emergency Management Agency, appropriating said funds and a required city match for such funds, authorizing the expenditure of such funds to the extent received, authorizing contracts and other documents to expend such funds to the extent received, containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of second reading report of standing committees.
Report of special committees.
We have none.
Board bills for perfection consent.
Board Bill 82, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Aldridge, and Alderwoman Velazquez. An ordinance to regulate employer and employee worker relationships between the City of St. Louis and all employees under the Circuit Attorney Office, including a compensation plan, terms and conditions of employment, benefits, leaves of absence, authorization for a deferred compensation plan, repealing ordinance number 71693, allocating certain other employees to a grade with rate, including an emergency clause and an effective date. Board Bill 70, sponsored by Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Velazquez, and Alderwoman Sanye. An ordinance repealing ordinance 68654, codified as chapter 4.63 of the revised code of the City of St. Louis, and enacting in lieu thereof a new ordinance relating to the same subject matter. Board Bill 74, sponsored by Alderman Browning, Alderman Narayan, Alderman Aldridge, and Alderwoman Sanye. An ordinance amending ordinance number 71758, property tax credit for eligible senior taxpayers residing in the City of St. Louis. That's the extent of board bills for perfection consent calendar.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the motion to adopt the bills for the perfection consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the board bills for perfection consent.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we adopt the board bills for the perfection consent calendar. Alderwoman from the 1st.
She's on 4.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I asked, just a point of order, last week I asked to be added as a co-sponsor to 74, and I believe a few other folks did as well, just to make sure that everybody's listed before we perfect it.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Are there other co-sponsors that need to be listed? Alderman from the 14th?
Myself, Alderman from the 3rd, Alderwoman from the 10th, Alderwoman, I remember from the 7th as well, and I think Madam President.
Correct. I was also a co-sponsor.
And Alderwoman from the 6th.
Make it a bank? What do you think?
Could I make a motion that we embank?
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 13th, that we embank Board Bill number 74. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please embank Board Bill number 74.
So noted.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Aldermen from the 9th, that we adopt the board bills for the perfection consent calendar. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 15 as amended, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Schweitzer, and Alderwoman Sanye. An ordinance amending Section B of Chapter 26.70.040 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis to extend the permitted operating hours of marijuana dispensaries.
Alderman from the 14th, you're recognized on the perfection of Board Bill 15 as amended.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move perfect Board Bill 15 as amended.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we perfect Board Bill number 15 as amended. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move to adopt the floor substitute to Board Bill 15.
You need to introduce and then move to adopt.
I would like to introduce Board Bill floor substitute to Board Bill 15 as amended.
Okay, and now you can make the motion to adopt.
And I move to adopt floor substitute to Board Bill 15
Is there,
as amended.
As amended. Is there a second? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderperson 7th, that we adopt Board Bill floor sub to Board Bill number 15 as amended. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Alderman, you may proceed on Board Bill 15 floor sub.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Board Bill 15 floor substitute is an ordinance that would update our zoning code that would allow marijuana dispensaries to operate from the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Currently, they are only able to operate from 8 to 8. Originally, when the bill was filed, it was to operate from 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. with some compromise and input from planning and members of this body. We decided to move it to 10 p.m. to be in line with the county. I think this is a huge opportunity for us to continue to bring in revenue in the city of St. Louis. There are currently 13 dispensaries throughout the city of St. Louis as they stand. There are several that operate beyond the current zoning of 8 a.m., but the longest that they go is to 9, and then there is one in the Swade and the Grove that goes. Again, this was kind of brought to my attention as a way that we can bring in revenue for the city of St. Louis, as there was a fear of what's going to happen with the earnings tax, with the lawsuit, as well as the legislator constantly continuing to attack our earnings tax. This was another way that we could generate more money. Director Paul Payne has been in front of the Budget Committee and said that we're estimated to bring in zoned under 8 to 8, $2.4 million. So any dollars that we could bring in to help the city of St. Louis, I think would be an amazing thing. What the floor substitute does is in the zoning code under 226 in the table of contents, even though marijuana use was already in the zoning, but it wasn't in the table of contents. So on page 2, what we did is we added marijuana use on the table of contents, which will be 26.7. And we also made marijuana uses if they want to go beyond the hours of 10 p.m. A conditional use process instead of a time variance process. And we also added a severability and emergency clause to the board bill. And with that, I would open up for any questions.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, I don't rise to oppose this. In my former life of one of my 3 positions, 20th, 1st, and 12th, in the first, I evolved. When I was the 20th Ward Alderwoman, I wouldn't have supported this at all. And as I became the 1st Ward Alderwoman, I want to thank the former Alderman of the 3rd Ward, Brandon Bosley Sr., because he brought a lot of conversation about marijuana to the caucus. And those of us who are from a different generation, we were taught the evils of marijuana from Big Pharma, we find out a lot of times, but also just from our parents, and all drugs were categorized as the same, and they didn't talk about the difference in the drugs. And the alderman from the 3rd talked to us often about it, and talked about it being a way to bring in money for the city. Also talked about that it was not as harmful as driving under the influence of alcohol, and it didn't have the same health problems that some of the other chemical drugs did, and or the alcohol. So we did come to support it, and the former alderwoman from the 14th got up and said, that would be Carol Howard, said much of what I said, that she also had come from a generation that you just didn't do that. Saying all of that, I think we missed the boat when the former alderman from the 7th, Jack Coder, and was doing the zoning bill. I think it was him that was doing it, and we allowed it to go to too many places. And so a lot of times in the African American community, what is a little problem in other parts of the community becomes a huge problem in our community. So, and the thing that we're dealing with right now is alcohol, nuisance grocery stores, because they're not grocery stores, nuisance convenience stores, nuisance gas stations, having shootings, killings, and never being able to close them down. Because when you do a conditional use, one of the problems is that when people are doing them, they didn't put conditions on things in black neighborhoods. So when you don't have conditions, when you try to close them down, they say, there's no conditions there. I've been saying that for years, and to his credit, when Jimmy Edwards was the director of public safety, he was my constituent, and we had a problem store right around the corner from his house, and he said, Sharon, oh, I get it now. You are absolutely right. Tom Villa, when I first came back here, talked about, we went to something about conditional use, and he was trying to put a black church with a white church in South St. Louis in the 11th Ward, and they put 500 conditions on it. And we were fighting a gas station and a liquor store, and they put no conditions and didn't listen to the people. And that was Salamas at St. Louis Avenue and Kings Highway, which we said was going to be shootings and killings and murders, and that's what's happening, and people hanging out. But the Board of Adjustment called us all liars. We brought preachers, mostly all homeowners. They brought a busload of people who they hired, who don't live in our neighborhood, and they believed the black faces rather than the residents. And so we're dealing with this right now. We have a shooting at each end of our community. We got one at St. Louis Avenue and Kings Highway, and at a gas station not owned by people who live in my neighborhood, and one at Martin Luther King and Kings Highway. The same thing is going on. So conditional uses are only as fair as the people that are doing them. Okay, when they're not fair, and often I voted against the Board of Adjustment because it gets worse over the years with Board of Adjustment because Francis Slay believed that no one north of Page should be on it. And the mayor, this current mayor, is doing the same thing, as did Lyda Crewson. So we don't have people who even reflect our view of what happened. So we have people making decisions about our neighborhoods at these conditional use hearings and at the Board of Adjustment that don't live in our neighborhoods. That is not the way the city is supposed to be set up. So I told the alderman from the 14th I was not going to be a present. And I'm going to come back and look at changing where these marijuana licenses can be. Two, I want to make a point. I haven't heard of any really problems, maybe because they don't have any in North St. Louis. Because even when they issued the license from the state, they didn't issue any in North St. Louis. Now, I didn't care, okay? But I haven't heard that there's a real problem, so maybe it won't. But I like to have things that are put in place for protection. So I'm not opposed to this because I think the former alderman from the 3rd made a really good point about that we have been brainwashed by Big Pharma. And so I've seen the people who have been sick, who have had cancer, and I've seen them use it. I have older people who use marijuana because they have arthritis and things like that. So you learn, hopefully. When people talk about, well, this used to be your position, I always say, tell them, but guess what? I learned, and when you know more, you do better. So I know more, so I'm not opposed to it, but I'm just going to vote present because I want to look at how I can protect. I don't like that they issue liquor licenses in North St. Louis, the gas stations right up against your house. So when somebody's coming at 12 o'clock or 10 o'clock and you're an older person and you go to bed at 8 o'clock and they're making noise, that's not fair to your neighborhood. And then that's not what an F neighborhood business license is supposed to be about. So that's my vote of present, not against the bill itself, but I haven't put in place the things that will protect my community more for those who don't want people doing business at 10 o'clock up against their house. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I know that I've spoken with many of you all about marijuana and marijuana policy for the last 6 years or so. I want to be clear just before the vote, I don't now, nor have I ever had any interest in dispensaries inside the city of St. Louis, but this is just good policy. Right now, you can see, if you look at the trends in dispensaries around the region, you can see a sales boom happening in the county right when our dispensaries close because people are literally just driving that extra few minutes to buy cannabis in the evening when they get off work or whatever. So this would just allow us to stay competitive in that area. Additionally, I have several of these dispensaries in my ward, and they are almost without exception the kind of business that you would want in your ward and that you wouldn't be concerned about operating later. I'd be much more concerned about bars and gas stations operating at night than a dispensary if I'm looking at where I see the problems at night. So I am firmly in support of this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 8th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Would the alderman from the 14th yield for questions, please?
The alderman from the 14th yield to question. Alderwoman from the 8th.
I do.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you. Alderman, I was just curious if you could help us understand if this has already gone through the Planning Commission, and if you could speak to that just briefly.
Yes, so it did go to through the Planning Commission. And when it originally went through the Planning Commission, it was under the original bill that was 10 to 12. I think like the alderman from the 4th mentioned, the idea for 12 o'clock was, how do we be not only in line with the county, but actually be more competitive? So when the county closes at 10 or across the river when they close at 9, that people will still come within the city to be able to go to some of the dispensaries. However, planning did not even take up the option of 12, which is a little frustrating. I do appreciate the work that planning does, but I think, we are the legislative body, and we could have been able to hash this out on the floor if it was 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock. But it did go through planning, and they suggested 10. I think this was a good start that we can start to move forward on and maybe revisit in the future if we will move further to another time to be competitive with our other region.
Thank you, Alderman. So in other words, the bill before us right now reflects the recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 5th.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Madam President. Will the Alderman from the 14th yield?
The Alderman for the 14th yields questioning from the Alderman for the 5th.
I do.
Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you so much. I have no problem with the 10 o'clock. I have only one question. Can they make it smell better?
Well, right now they actually smell pretty good. They smell better than like a bar or a cigar store.
Nah.
And they don't smoke. And
if they can remove the skunk, they can stay up until midnight. How's that?
As an alderwoman, I heard from the 12th, they don't actually smoke at the dispensaries. They just sell it at it. But, you know, a little skunk never hurt.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderman for the 14th, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I do want to just echo something that the alderman from 14th, that's me, the 4th said. The alderman from the I know the skunk is already getting to me, and the na. The alderman from what the 4th said of, you know, I think this is just good policy to be competitive with our region. Also, I want to echo something he said and something the alderwoman from the 12th said. You know, when you look at these 13 dispensaries that we have in the city of St. Louis, you know, they are super safe. They are super protected. They actually have to have more security than a liquor store or cigar store or cigarette store. Before you even go in the dispensary, you have to show ID. They have to have security. They have camera inside and out. So I appreciate all my colleagues' input on this, even the alderwoman from the 12th. I understand why she is present. I do want to mention most of or all these dispensaries currently right now are like in commercial area. So I do get the concern of making sure that as we move forward that these are not, you know, maybe right next door to a home like a lot of the gas stations are, especially. But at this moment, they are all in kind of commercial areas, not to homes. But I appreciate her time and her willingness to talk to me on the legislation. And with that, I move to perfect Board Bill 15 floor substitute.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we perfect Board Bill number 15 floor substitute. And Madam Clerk, if you could also make sure I'm added as a co-sponsor. I think I was originally.
So noted.
There's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Yes. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Aye. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Present. Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Balmer.
Aye.
14 aye votes and 1 voted present. That's the extent of board bills for perfection.
Report of engrossment.
We have none.
Third reading and final passage board bills consent.
We have none.
Third reading and final passage board bills.
We have none.
Report of the finally passed and signed by the President.
We have none.
We can dispense with line items 17 through 19. First reading resolutions in reference to committees.
Resolution 144, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard and President Green, Special Committee on Charter Revisions.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the first reading of Resolution 144.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. I move that we adopt
Unanimous consent. You have to ask.
unanimous consent for resolution. My numbers are running together here today.
Hearing no objection, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I will be open to any questions or anything about this, but I think what we know and what we learned is that this is an additional opportunity for us to engage residents in the city of St. Louis in a charter that hasn't been looked at, we know, for decades. And so this is just creating that special committee, similar to the special committee that we had on long-term health care. And so I think that this is work that we were all committed to when we passed it down here in the board, and that we're all committed to continuing it, and I look forward to us supporting and forming this special committee.
Alderwoman, would you like to make a motion to adopt?
Yes, I would like to make the motion to adopt Resolution 144.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Aldermen from the 3rd, that we adopt Resolution 144. Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 10th.
Madam President, members of the board, when we were talking about the special committee, it was not a good look for us because there were people who were trying to leave those of us who live north of Page out of the process. Even though we passed a law that says that we should be part of it, that still didn't happen. We have some persons that have two, wasn't even on this board, they got 2 appointments, and they're as far away from North St. Louis as possible. We need to look at who is on the charter committee because it's not being followed. It was a very contentious process. When people only hear one side of what they want to hear and don't hear the other side, all you had to do was come to North St. Louis, then you hear a whole different thing. And if you didn't hear it, it was heard at the Julia Davis Library with the recommendations that came out of there. One of the people who I recommended, because my ward covers Central Corridor and North St. Louis and far North St. Louis now, and I gave that person a chance who said they would talk to me. I never did talk to them. They never talked to me afterwards. And then they were like in horror of what had happened. It is because they didn't know anything about this city and the recommendations. I wish I would not have supported the Charter Commission now. I will not be supporting anything that comes out of it because they have, down here, what has occurred is that there's an agenda that everybody is marching to, and you don't hear the other side. You don't hear it at all. You just decide this is what should be. Non-homeowners, renters think that they know better than homeowners about what should happen. They're passing laws, and they never have owned a house. And they're passing laws about pushing, homeless or non-house people into certain areas, and then saying things like, oh, well, they can't be down near the Baden area or the Riverpoint area because that's so far out of the way. I actually represent people who live there. That's like saying crime is so far out of the way. You would never say that, but you let your ignorance show when you talk about these things as though we're not an entire city. I am not supporting anything about the Charter Commission because it does not work. It is supposed to be something that was to bring people together. It is not. What you have to do doing that is you have to hear and incorporate people who absolutely disagree with you. If you don't understand that, then you'll find out when they get defeated at the polls. And you will find that out really easy now by looking at busing. People told us that they did not want busing, and people forced it down people's throats, and we saw people leave the city of St. Louis public schools in droves. We work with things that would help people transition. By comparison, I want to tell you that I was here when we first had gambling. And the difference in how we did gambling was first you had to cruise up and down the river. And then you had to be in a moat. And then you had to be by the water. And then you had to be near the water. And now you don't have that because people got used to it and people accepted it. When you think you got a mandate against a whole other side of the community that does not agree with you, that doesn't work. It will not work. And we're not going to support it. And I have a lot of people, you already put people on edge. You recommend getting rid of the comptroller and putting her under the treasurer. The treasurer is already under the comptroller, our finance department. People don't know what they're doing. We had too many people on the charter commission who do not know what they're doing. They don't even understand how the charter works. We should have had somebody on there. And there's a person in my community who knows the charter backwards and forward. You need somebody like that, because then when they run things by people and say, oh, this is a great idea. No, it wasn't. It was a political agenda. And that's what I'm hearing all through my community. That is a political agenda. You don't stop and say, uh-oh, we made a mistake. Let's pull back. Let's have people who disagree. It's like having a prosecution and no defense, or a defense and no prosecution. That's what happens down here now. And I didn't like it when I thought it was happening in my previous life as a first ward alderperson, and I stood up and defended the people who said it. And now I don't like it for the people who are in power doing even worse than what they said the previous administration. I am not as supportive of it. I will not be anyway voting for it. I'll be voting against it all until we have a real group of people that differ and sit down. All we have is a attempt to coup and take over a city and go around long established principles. These are the same people who whined when the Supreme Court got rid of Roe v. Wade and talked about the precedent. But we have done so much to be a dictatorship down here that more and more, I want people to know, people are watching this. This is not a good look. And no, I will not be supporting it. And you can vote and have all the most votes you want to, but ultimately there will be a vote of the people. And every time you come to North St. Louis, you're going to get such a negative reaction, because whether you like it or not, they represent it. And they elected people who did not agree with what you're doing. And you have not found a way to compromise. You found a way to try to just run over it and not hear it. And that does not work. And I'm opposed to it. Roll call.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 10th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Just for clarity, I share in some of the concerns of the work that came out of the Charter Commission and that year-long process that was delayed for so many reasons. But again, this is not the Charter Commission. This is not the same people that were on the Charter Commission. This forms a special committee, and this special committee will have members that have not been chosen yet, that we as a board and as a body will be able to discuss and talk about, to make sure that people's voices, and there's balance in the voices that will be on there. So again, this is not in no way the former Charter Commission or their work. This is a special committee that will form the same way we formed the one on long-term health care, when we know there are needs that we here as a body can address. Thank you.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I share some of the concerns that the Alderwoman from the 12th brought up, and you know, the Charter Commission certainly did not go off without a hitch. There were many issues there. I think that this, though, is something that we've always had the authority to do, and frankly, we should have been doing more frequently. The idea that we haven't had a good hard look at the charter that was drafted in 1914. I mean, so often we talk here about 1904. That's 120 years ago now. So 10 years after they invented the ice cream cone, we drafted a charter, and we're still using it, and we haven't had substantial updates to it. I think it's imperative that we have a conversation as a community, and by a community I mean north, central, south, east, west. I think everyone in the city needs to have an equal voice in this, but I think that if we want to move forward as a city, it's important that we have that discussion and try and pull the controlling document of our city into this century. We can and should control for a lot of the issues that the Alderwoman from the 12th brought up. I think it's the makeup of this committee will be really important. And I think that she also raised a really important point. If the ideas are bad, the voters will vote them down. I mean, I trust the voters. There's actually a pretty high threshold to make these changes. And, some of the changes that the Charter Commission brought up, I know that people in my community would be voting no for. and that's fine. We built a whole building to come here and disagree with each other. And I think it's important that we have these discussions and put it forward to people and see if we can make some changes for the better. Or if the people are going to say, hey, that's a really stupid idea, don't do that. And I'm good either way. Thank you.
Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you. I am in agreement that we need to take a look at some of the previous proposals and analyze and look at maybe explore some of these ideas a little further, and certainly also look at the charter process. I hear from a lot of my colleagues the idea that this process wasn't fair, that it wasn't equitable, and while this was our first crack at it in a long time, I think we can all acknowledge that there is room for improvement, and that when this commission meets again in 10 years, it should look and operate differently, especially when it comes to community engagement and how it engages with the communities that it is proposing to change the charter for. So I'll get that out of the way by saying that. I do have a couple questions, though, because the resolution text was not on the website, and I want to emphasize that that's important, that people be able to read the text before we pass it, and that's not been the case. But it's also pretty scant on details, and so I just had a couple questions for the sponsor, if the Alderwoman with the 10th would yield for questions.
Absolutely.
The Alderwoman from the 10th yields questioning from the Alderman from the 9th.
So my understanding is this would operate somewhat like the Committee on Long-Term Health, and put out recommendations. Do we have an understanding of who would be sitting on this committee?
Not yet. No, this is just forming the committee, just again, similar to that. And as any of our committees down here at the Board of Aldermen, they will then go through the process of being appointed by our president.
And is there any consideration of like non-alders sitting on this committee?
Yes, similar to, again, I just keep comparing it to that because I think people are getting confused about it being a separate thing. And this will be a committee of the board, which also I want to note, that means that they will be aired live on STL TV. We will have people there you can attend and support or offer non-support, whatever you want to do when you come in and speak on anything like we do with our committees, which I think is an even more transparent process than what we have with the commission. And then we will have also the ability for us to speak up for our constituents. If you want to choose to serve on the committee, Alderman Browning, I know that would be an opportunity for us if any of us want to. And I think down here, we have to take opportunities like this to be the voice for our people instead of pushing them back.
And is there an idea when this committee might first meet?
Not yet.
Okay.
We got to get it formed first.
I would urge that we wait until after the November election just to avoid confusion about what's on the ballot currently.
Absolutely.
That we don't create confusion about what people are voting on. But otherwise, I'm happy to support this committee and look forward to seeing what we can turn out from it.
Thank you so much, Alderman Browning. I'm glad you brought up that point about creating confusion. I think we would all be on the same page about it. Because anything ideally that would come, and I want to add that things wouldn't necessarily come out of this committee that are proposed within the discussion of this committee. Say, for instance, something came out about the water department. That would then go to Public Utilities and Infrastructure Committee. It would be in order with that. This is not anything to try to be nefariously move anything through. And I know sometimes those kind of buzzwords and things incite people to be confused about the work that can be done down here by us as we were elected to do. So again, I thank you for bringing that up because that's an important step this week. In no way, shape, or form could we have even gotten this done, appointed, and getting something out of it by November anyway. So that was a good point to bring up. I thank you. And again, I hope that we can get this work done. Again, that we hear from all of our constituents across the city of St. Louis needs to be done.
Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I do not disagree with what the Alderman from the 4th or the Alderwoman from the 12th mentioned of just how the Charter Commission absolutely could have been ran a little better. To take into account, these was volunteers that they didn't have much support. I know that there was members from the mayor's office, the president's office that sat on the board, but they really was tasked with a huge job to look at the charter and to try to figure out within a year, maybe they should have had more time frame, but the ordinance was what it was, to be able to try to come together to look at ways that we can improve the city of St. Louis by upgrading the charter, which is our Bible. So, I mean, I do know that there was frustration, and I totally understand it. And I think this is why it's important that this committee is formed. And I know there's been special committees like the long-term health care that I chaired before. It was myself. It was an alderwoman from the 13th Ward, and also former Alderman Middlebrook, who chaired it. It was several who chaired it, and that work took beyond a year's process, even to when I came down to the board. So, you know, I don't see this committee coming up with findings and rushing the process. I think, if anything, what we do know at the Board of Aldermen, we know how to do community engagement more than any other body within the city of St. Louis. We hold committee hearings where actually we invite community to come out and be able to testify, even if it's in the daytime. I know a lot of committees have went to evening to make sure that residents who were not able to attend can attend. A lot of our meetings are online. We are, I think, the best option in City Hall when it comes to community engagement around these issues. So I believe if we establish this committee, some of the hiccups that the alderman from the 4th, the alderman from the 12th, and the alderman from the 14th had, we could be able to make sure doesn't happen during this process. And we started to look at ways that we can modify or modernize the city charter. And I'm happy the alderwoman from the 10th brought up kind of the time frame after the alderman from the 9th comments. You know, I think, you know, if this committee was set up today, we're in September, only a few more weeks before October, I would doubt that the committee would come up with any, you know, recommendations or finding by the November election. I know he's been doing a lot of hard work on one of the charter commissions with Proposition T, as well as the alderman from the 6th Ward on Proposition V, and the alderman from the 14th Ward on Proposition B, and Madam President and the alderman from the 4th Ward on Proposition S. Make sure you get out and vote on those propositions November the 5th. But I think this is a good way that we continue to look at our charter, and I would just like to be added as a co-sponsor to the resolution.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to echo some of my colleagues' concerns and thoughts. This is an opportunity. I think what the Charter Commission obviously shined a light on is that there's a lot of work to do in modernizing our city, and that it does require a robust and diverse set of voices to do that. I also think it's very important, if we want to continue to work on reform and change, the charter is an essential component of that. So I would also like to be added as a co-sponsor, and just thank you for starting this process so we can dive into a whole new set of complex problems and issues together.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, I'd like to read a little thing in response to the alderman from the 4th. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, on and on. That is the Constitution of the United States, which I had to learn when I was right. I say that to say having an old document does not make it a document that should be thrown out. And we've been using this, and we have a method that we can improve on it, and we have all these amendments, one of them which allowed me, two of them that allowed me to vote. One for slavery, black people, and one for women. And only this board of the aldermen took my right to vote away in 2001, which is illegal. When I talk about it, that's illegal. For all of you all keep saying why I talk about it, that's illegal, okay? So I don't have the faith that people have about, oh, we're going to make it better. New people tend to think that they created the wheel because they don't even know any better. They don't know what happened. That's why you come and talk to senior people, because you find out how much you don't know. As I got to be 25, 35, 45, 55, I found out how smart my parents were because I didn't know how smart they were because I thought I knew everything. I have not had faith in, oh my, there you go. I have not had faith in how this board has been run. It has not been in the best interest of the black community, and I have all these people trying to shove things into our community. And I was here when we created the Charter Commission. We were meeting over at SLDC in the boardroom or whatever, and or down in one of the rooms down there. And the alderwoman from the 8th, who was then the alderwoman of the 20th, we put a coalition to put the Charter Commission together so that we would have representation. But that don't happen. It's what happens at this city, and why I don't trust it, is that this city, we have a tale of 2 or 3 cities. And people talk about it, but then when it manifests itself in me, because all you people together have never been elected as many times as I have. So that tells you I speak for my community. When it manifests that you said, well, we're going to take away what the black people did, you manifest a distrust, okay? You don't say, well, this is a person, whether we like what she's saying or not. She obviously been tested, and she's right here. And the only way that could be done is to be cheated. So when you change the rules so that you can have a dictatorship, you then do not trust it in my community. And they're seeing it more and more. So when you come out, and the next thing you do is come after one of the people that I helped get elected, the comptroller, that makes them distrusted. And the reason why you don't know any better is because you don't have anybody in that room telling you that's not a good idea. When you're in the room with the people who tell you all what you want to hear, then you're in trouble. You become the king who had no clothes. A few months ago, when we were meeting over in the Kennedy room, I spoke in support of someone who other people at this board said to be on a commission that was pro-police officers. I've always voted mostly against the mayor's appointments because they're not fair and they're racist, just like Francis was. But I took up for this person because it's always been my position that it's supposed to be a diverse group of people on all commissions from all parts of the city. The alderman from the 4th knows this because when we were trying to put together the group that would decide about merging the city and the county, I was the leader, and all the things that we're talking about, I was making sure and negotiating that there were gays, that there were blacks, there were people from South St. Louis, there were women. That's always been my position. Not that they agree with me. And I think that anybody who thinks that a committee should be made up of people who don't like the police and none that like the police, that's a ridiculous position, okay? So when you guys talk about how great this is, it's not great. It's not great when you let a president do that and you base it on what the president wants. It should be based on seniority, people who've been here, who actually know something. The reason why the alderman from the 14th comes over here, because he doesn't know the things. He talks about, I was in support, I was chair of a committee. That's because you've been set up to make it seem like you know more than you know. And you don't know until many years later that you didn't know what you were doing, okay? And so that's my thing, okay? I don't try to tell anybody down here pretty much anymore because when you know everything, and I learned this from Joanne Wayne when she was the first ward alderwoman, and she taught me a lesson as a new person. Me, Jack Garvey, Dan Gruen, my class was 6, and we were so sure of something, and then we got our butts kicked, and we went to, first we went to the 15th ward, Alderwoman Geraldine Osborne, and then we went to Joanne Wayne, which was the first ward, and we whined. And she said, well, you come down here knowing everything. If you shut your mouth and opened your ears and listened to the people, you would learn so many things. The Alderwoman from the 13th talks about accountability. How you be accountable is that when you are doing something that is wrong, you say it. If you keep pushing your agenda, it does not work. So you're all sitting down here saying, oh, this is great. No, it isn't. When you are pushing a workhouse agenda that does not include the alderwoman from the 13th or the alderwoman from the 12th, both of us hadn't been included in anything. This is what you want. We never come to South St. Louis and tell you what's good for in South St. Louis. But you tell us what's good for over and over. For years, the alderwoman from the 13th, and she was the 27th, would tell the members down here, you're not black. Stop telling me how to be black. You can't. That's why black people elect their own people from their own neighborhoods where they can get to. You want to have people that you have on the marginal area. They may be black, but they got a big white population too, so you can control them. That is not what this Board of Aldermen is supposed to be about. It's not what redistricting is supposed to be about, and it's not what the charter is supposed to be about. So talking about the president will appoint them, that's going to click with people, just like with the mayor, because it's an agenda. We, as the alderman from the 4th said, we have always been able to change the charter. And we have made charters. I'm going to tell you one of the charter changes they made right when they racially gerrymandered me, and that was that each committee of the Board of Aldermen had a right to all of the papers and documents in the city. So that when we asked for, when I was the chair of streets, we asked the treasurer to bring us copies of where people had got documents from and where people had been awarded documents, and he promised and he didn't. And then we did a subpoena, and there are 2-3 of us still who was on that committee. And I never had a problem with the previous presidents who signed the subpoena, because the charter and our rules say mandate that the president did. But guess what this president didn't do? She would not sign it and said to me, oh, everything doesn't have to be contentious, or the word that whatever she used. I don't have faith in that, because one of the things I'm known for, even if it's my friend, if I think they're doing something wrong, I will say it. Even if it's somebody I work with, I will say it. When Jeffrey Boyd got in trouble, I'm the person, when he kept trying to move.
Alderman from the 14th with a point of order.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I would like to cite Rule 38 that we say germane to the topic. I believe we're discussing if we would take up a resolution that is around the charter. We've mentioned people having experience. We're bringing up former alder people that was incarcerated. Everything but the actual topic. And while it sounds good, it is not germane to what we're actually talking about.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the 12th, if you could please keep your comments germane to the formation of a special committee to continue revisions on the charter.
I will, as long as you stopped the other person from saying it, but you didn't. And so I've always opposed this. You can't let somebody, and the alderman from the 4th knows this, you can't let the defense say something and then say the prosecution can't say something, or vice versa. So I'm only addressing what he said, and I'm just about finished to say, when Jeffrey got in trouble, I called him out and said, you cannot pass this. When there were rules, when we were trying to work together to stop the airport from being sold, even though the rule was against us and I was over with you guys, I then said, but I don't think that this. So I'm truthful and honest, and I don't like when you tell me this is going to be a fair process, I'm saying I haven't seen this down here. So when the people get up, don't say it's going to be a fair process. Say we got an agenda and we just going to do it. But when you say it's going to be a fair process, I'm going to tell you why it's not a fair process and what it's been and what people are seeing out here. So this, oh, we're so great. It is not great. And you know better than anybody, Alderman from the 4th, who and what I have been, okay? And for you all to strip me of my seniority, that's a travesty. That's what
Alderman from the 14th,
that's
please
what
state your
it looks
point of
like
order.
to be a dictatorship.
Alderwoman.
And that's why I'm not going to support it. You can turn my mic. You can't turn it off.
Thank you for turning the mic off. Since I have the floor, Rule 38 again, if we could say, we are not talking about seniority. We are talking about forming the committee on the charter recommendation. So for the second time, Madam President, I would ask that we stay germane to the rules or germane to the topic in front of us.
And for the second time, I will tell you that we are talking about if we choose to believe this is going to be a fair process or not.
Alderwoman, I have the floor to make a ruling on that point of order before you are permitted to speak. I would just like to reiterate once again, please keep your topic germane to the issue that is in front of us.
And I'm going to tell you that from now on, if anybody gets anything at all, I'm going to get up and say objection, objection. You cannot let people address something and then try to close the response off. The time to object is when they said it. This is not going to be a fair process. This is going to be a very unfair process based on experience for the last year and some odd months. If you're calling that fair, then you are not telling the truth, whoever you are. That is not a fair process, and it did not become fair with the Charter Commission, and it's not going to be fair down here. And so you don't want to hear the truth. You want to close it up, but you can't make me be quiet in my community. And so people called me this morning, wanted to know what we were doing about this. Why was this back on the agenda again? And they're all prepared for it not to be something that's good. So if you want to be fair, that's why in Congress they have a majority and a minority. You don't get to just have all one thing that was set up so that to silence people. I will not be silenced, and I will not be supporting this.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Again, frankly, I agree with a lot of what the Alderwoman from the 12th has just brought up. I think, like on the roadmap of where we're trying to go, I think we're taking a lot of the same routes, and I can tell you some of the concerns she brought up are very valid, and that's why I was advocating to make sure that this subcommittee, if passed, does take into account voices from all over the city, from all walks of life within our city. And if it doesn't, frankly, I'll be on her side voting no against things that are brought up. I think during even the Prop C discussion, I've been very clear about the idea that we ultimately, this body has the authority to put things on the ballot to see if voters want to change our founding document, and that authority rests with us, not with anyone else, unless they want to go through the initiative petition process, which is a fine process. But if the process is flawed, I certainly will be voting against it. But I want to also just take note about something that the Alderwoman brought up. With the Constitution, having studied the Constitution like she has, I think one of the greatest things about that document is the ability to change that document. And that's ultimately what we're discussing here. And I know that her and I may disagree on some of the minutia there, but I think ultimately, she brought up 2 amendments that made it possible both for her to vote and to be in this room today. And the ability to change these documents to modernize society and to make it a more perfect union is important. And for me, that's what we're discussing here is the ability to make those changes and to have a broad set of voices come together to discuss those changes. And not all ideas are good. I mean, frankly, in this room, we've sat and discussed a lot of bad ideas over the years, but I think it's important to have the discussion regardless. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman from the 4th. Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just wanted to rise, and first, I do want to thank the members who volunteered for the Charter Commission. It was a messy process. I share many of the sentiments shared that community engagement could have definitely been done a little bit more holistically, but I know you guys were volunteers, and this was our first crack at something that hasn't been done in a long time. So I just want to thank those members in case they are, watching the meeting, to understand that I do appreciate their service and what they've done to start us on this path. Secondly, I did not study in law school the Constitution, but I think many of us obviously are well readers, are well educated, and one of the things that is similar to our Constitution is in that Constitution, Black people were 3/5 of a person, and then for the St. Louis City Constitution in 1914, Black people did not even have the right to vote, which I think is a great example of why we need to be, revisiting this document. I'm really excited to see the committee form, and I hope to see, well-rounded representation on the committee, but of course that has to involve alders who are willing to serve on those committees. So I hope that we will show up in those spaces and offer ourselves and tell President, Madam President, that we want to serve on that committee, and then hold her to account to appointing us, as well-rounded and representative as possible as our process permits. But I do think it is important to take it through, because when we do have a committee on the Board of Aldermen, I know I do my job and I tell my constituents, have meetings, I'll make graphics to spread it. As I go to their neighborhood meetings every month, I talk to them about it, they email me about it, and there are many people in the city, even if they didn't agree or disagree on some of the suggestions that were made by the charter recommendation, that would agree that we need to be analyzing documents and analyzing practices and analyzing protocols and updating them and making sure that they are best working for folks, because wherever people are on the spectrum, There are a lot of people in the city of St. Louis, including a lot of us in this room, who are aware that some things are just simply not broken. And so I'm really excited to serve in any way, even if it means just here on the board, getting to hear the considerations. But I just want to make sure that I lift it up like there's a reason why we should be having these conversations. And I really do think it's important to have a committee process that is very public, where we can take our meetings wherever we like, where we have STLTV, where we have a budget to type of engagement that I believe needs to be done. And also want to make sure that I go on the record that, I do think we have to be doing our job of reviewing things and updating processes. And I don't think anybody, necessarily runs for office or wants to be in leadership without the thought of things wanting to play a role in moving things forward and revisit things and analyze things. And with that, I would also like to be added as co-sponsor.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I think a lot of the discussion today shows even more of the need for a committee like this. And everybody knows that I don't like being around people that agree with me all the time. I like being around people that say yes all the time, because when we come together in the middle, that's where the real change happens. And I believe and do have the faith that a committee like this is where something like that can happen. And also under the understanding that forming the committee is one thing. If we form it today, that doesn't mean we're going to wake up tomorrow and there's going to be charter changes that nobody knows about. And one thing about our committees, I'm in the community all the time saying, please show up. Please have your voice heard via Zoom, in person, written comments. This is an even more, I think, transparent process for us to be able to do that. I'm glad Alderwoman Sanye from the 7th brought up the fact that we do honor the work that was done in that commission for a year, but now we just want to complement that work, right, with forming this special committee. So I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adopt resolution number 144. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Balmer. Ten aye votes. I'm sorry. 10 aye votes and 4 no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderwoman from the 10th to adopt resolution 144.
That's the extent of first reading resolutions in reference to committee.
Second reading resolutions, committee reports, and adoptions.
Resolution 57, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, President Green, Alderman Narayan, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Velazquez, and Alderwoman Sanye. Re-envisioning the workhouse recommendation.
Alderman from the 14th, you're recognized on the second reading of resolution number 57.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, would the clerk please read Resolution 57?
Madam Clerk, if you could please read resolution number 57.
Resolution 57, re-envisioning the workhouse recommendation. Whereas following the significant community advocacy and Mayor Tashara O. Jones taking office in April 2021, the workhouse was first emptied as a municipal jail in June of 2021. The facility has remained empty of detainees since June of 2022. And whereas the re-envisioning the workhouse report was completed in January of 2024 in collaboration with the City of St. Louis in partnership with steering committee, facilitation team, community members, and impacted persons of the workhouse. Whereas several recommendations were made for both on-site and off-site utilization of the workhouse that focuses on restoration of the land in a way in which community support, and whereas the Jones administration has confirmed that the site will not be used as another detention facility. And whereas the Board of Aldermen continue to support the efforts and recommendations from the Re-envisioning the Workhouse report, which include a variety of recommendations such as animal shelter and a memorial hub. Whereas the Board of Aldermen recognize the comprehensive analysis and recommendations presented in the Re-envisioning the Workhouse report, supports its findings as a crucial step towards centering those that have been impacted by the generational harm of the workhouse. Whereas the Close the Workhouse campaign has been the top 3 recommendations from Re-envisioning the Workhouse report, which include adopting and recommendations of the Re-envisioning the Workhouse report, funding the Resource Memorial Hub, and to amend and redress harm done to those who were incarcerated at the workhouse. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we recognize the work of the Close the Workhouse campaign, the steering committee and policy and process recommendations, the ongoing commitment of the Jones administration, and the advocacy of those impacted by the workhouse facility. The Board of Aldermen supports the adoption and recommendations of Re-envisioning the Workhouse report, funding the Resource Memorial Hub, and to amend and redress harm done to those who were incarcerated at the workhouse, and will continue the work with Jones administration to bring those recommendations to fruition. Introduced this 7th day of June, 2024 by the Honorable Rasheen Aldridge of the 14th Ward and the following co-sponsors. The Honorable Megan Green, the Honorable Brett Ryan, the Honorable Daniela Velasquez, the Honorable Alicia Sanye, the Honorable Shameen Clark Hubbard, the Honorable Laura Keys, and the Honorable Rasheen Aldridge.
Alderman for the 14th, you are recognized on the adoption of resolution number 57.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move to adopt Resolution 57.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt resolution 7. Alderman, you may.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. This resolution is a resolution that came through public safety yesterday. I know it was embanked, and I thank all the members in public safety for supporting it. The goal of this resolution was to recommit from the Board of Aldermen to stand in support with the Re-envisioning campaign to ensure a lot of the recommendations that they came up with continues to be upheld. This was filed before an announcement was made this week from the mayor's office that there will be some demolition of the workhouse. We do appreciate her willingness to move forward. I think when people said close the workhouse, it wasn't for it to just sit empty, but actually how do we transform it to a place that have eventually in the past have done so much harm to make it into a place that could do good. Some of the recommendations that the campaign had asked for it to be was a memorial site, a community center that could benefit the neighborhood, potentially animal shelter and many other things to turn a place that has, again, done harm, people have died in it, to try to make good out of the workhouse. And with that, I would close and open up for any questions from my committee members.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. As the Alderman said, this came through public safety yesterday. We've had robust conversations about the workhouse in public safety and on the floor of this board for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been here. And I think ultimately this resolution is about the mayor listening to the voices of people, and I think that should be all people, not just one subset of people. I think the mayor needs to listen to the voices of everyone on this issue. And I think that there are some legitimate concerns surrounding the workhouse in general. I'm interested in the amount of dollars that have been spent on the workhouse, on the building itself, and between the time that it was emptied out and now we're demoing it. That's a lot of money that seems to have been flushed down the drain. I want to know the extent of the damage to the building. It's My understanding is that it's flooded twice and it was broken into once. I want to know the extent of the damage to the building. I know that the folks in the Re-Envision group have said that they don't want anyone to be sheltered there. They're very opposed to the mayor's tiny house project. I understand some of their concerns, but I also am, pragmatically speaking, it's going to get cold in St. Louis like it does every year, and in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, we're going to be scrambling to find emergency shelter to keep people from freezing to death, and to demo a place that could, at least, like I said, I don't know the extent of the damage, could be used to house people in an emergency manner it's irresponsible to me. There's also the discussion on animals, an animal shelter. I think it blows my mind that we would be talking about expending serious dollars on an animal shelter while we have legitimate concerns of people freezing to death in the winter every year. This resolution is about listening to people, which is why I signed on to it, but we need to listen to all of the people, and I'll be supportive of this, but I think that we need to make sure that we're hearing all of the voices when it comes to what to do with this parcel moving forward and how we want to move forward as a city with this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 13th.
Thank you, Madam President. Would the alderman from the 14th take a question?
The alderman for the 14th yields questioning from the alderwoman from the 13th.
I do.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
So, Alderman Aldridge, could you tell me, are they going to close down the Justice Center?
Who are they?
To close the workhouse people?
I don't think they call for closing the Justice Center. I think they call for closing the workhouse.
I know what they called for. So they said it was inhumane conditions in the workhouse. And so that's why they wanted it closed. And so it's inhumane conditions in the Justice Center. We've had 6 people to die. We've had a judge to send orders to the workhouse, to the Justice Center, to make sure these people have proper hygiene in there to survive. So that's why I asked that question, because fair exchange is no robbery. So that's where I'm at with this. And so the statement I want to make, and I made it publicly, the alderwoman from the 12th made the comment earlier. Her and I cover the workhouse. The media contacted me to say, what is your thoughts on demo in the workhouse? I had no knowledge of what was going on, and my constituents have no knowledge. And I'm pretty sure the 12th Ward alderperson, her constituents didn't know anything about it. Plans were made, people made decisions, and again, you neglected to follow up with the people that's impacted in that community. And so I will be a firm no on this resolution. I do not support how this was done. It was disrespectful to my community and the 12th Ward community. So thank you very much. I have no more comments.
Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President. Would the alderman of the 14th yield to an inquiry?
Yes.
Alderman from the 14th yields questioning from the alderwoman from the 7th.
Yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Alderman. I just wanted to clarify, just because I want to make sure there's no misinformation on record. Can you tell us when you filed your resolution, and can you clarify if that was before any announcement of demolition or anything like that?
Yes, thank you, Alderwoman, because I think it's always important to make sure we fact check and not misleading people. So this resolution was filed months ago. It was filed before we actually went on break. The announcement that was made by the mayor that I think the Alderwoman from the 13th is talking up, she needs to take that up with the mayor, in the decision that they decided. If she didn't see a press release that came to our email or that was stated in the news, that was not a decision made by the board. The Workhouse Re-envisioning campaign was a campaign that went on for over a year, and one of the recommendations is not to demo the locations that are being demoed. So I want people to be very clear that what came out Wednesday is not what is even in the resolution today. It is how do we re-envision how we can use the workhouse to be a holistic place, or how we can use it to be a resource in the 13th or the 12th Ward. It is not making any hard decisions. It is just saying, how do we continue to have conversations about what the workhouse can be made up of? And I know there was residents that attended the meeting yesterday that spoke in favor of it, that lived in the 13th Ward, of what it can look like in the future.
Thank you. Could you also clarify, were you contacted or aware of the demolition by the administration?
I was not. And that's why I agree with the Alderwoman from the 13th. I was not contacted on what Room 200 was doing. I was preparing for the hearing, and that information came out a day before the hearing. I don't have any kind of feelings towards it, but no, I was not contacted as well.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to make sure it was clear on record that we, that we were not. None of us were, I was not contacted. I think all of us got notice of the demolition from the press release with the rest of the public. I don't think any of us knew that that was going on, and that the resolution had been a conversation point long before there was any announcements of what the workhouse, and that the intention of the resolution is to honor what a group of individuals that are citywide came together and made recommendations after being asked by the administration to form a group and come together and analyze this and give suggestions. So the resolution is just uplifting, a request that we would honor what the folks who spent their time volunteering and answered a call to service and form recommendations did. So I just want to be clear that we weren't confusing this resolution with anything that the administration, has decided or not decided to do, that this is completely independent, and this was simply about honoring what that commission recommended. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 11th.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. So, I was in the hearing yesterday, and I heard some things that truly are just not true. There was talk about contaminated land, and I'm yet to see any evidence about it being contaminated. However, if we look several places, particularly in North St. Louis, that have been classified by the federal government as being contaminated land. The street that I grew up on, the 3600 block of Aldine, sits between Grand and Spring. I would classify that as contaminated land because Liberty Auto has been there in excess of probably 60 years. Not too far away from there are a variety of scrap yards with auto parts leaking gasoline, oil, transmission fluid. That's been seeping into that ground in excess of 60 plus years. Then if we go a little bit farther, in the same area, there used to be an actual slaughterhouse in North St. Louis. You could hear the pigs, out there in the yard. And so when we talk about contaminated land, let's keep going. Let's talk about the area near Carter Carburetor, which the federal government has said is contaminated land, and yet there are still houses there. There are businesses there. Herbert Hoover's Boys Club is there. The site where Carter Carburetor currently used to sit, there's talk of putting a PGA there. There is a way to remediate land that is contaminated. And when we talk about the speculation that there could possibly be small houses, tiny houses built on that land, and to speak of it in such a negative way, when tiny houses are being built all across the United States, people are downsizing. But in terms of our unhoused population, and if you have ever been to any of the tiny house projects and taken a tour, which I have, they are beautiful. The one at Grand, the tiny village for unhoused veterans, They basically get a smaller version of a home. They have their own kitchen. They have their own bath, which is fully functional. They have their privacy. They have air conditioning. They have heating. And so you're talking about offering somebody some blankets on the sidewalk when they could be offered a potential home on land that is remediated. All over the United States, there are places that were once areas that were uninhabitable that have been remediated, that have been inspected at the federal and the state level, and converted into places where people can live very healthily. Now, let's talk about the situation with the workhouse. Over $35 million were spent at the workhouse, updating, the showers. They had all of the services that were needed out there. Now, I'm not saying bad things didn't happen there, but when I look at what's happening downtown, and I've said this many times, I believe that the potential for a human rights violations lawsuit, it should be ready to go. They are housed in an office building that was never intended to house incarcerated persons. They don't have the ability to get outside, to get rid of some of that nervous energy that people who are incarcerated, and let me qualify that by saying that I have worked with every level of offender. I was a tracker for juvenile offenders for 9 years, and I also was a case manager for the Illinois Department of Corrections handling federal and state parolees. So I'm well familiar with some of the things that incarcerated persons have to go through, okay? So when we look at how they are currently housed downtown in a place that is wholly unsuitable for them to be there, and then we take a look at a place, number one, that already exists, could be remediated, but again, I've not seen the report at the federal or state level that says that this place is actually contaminated. But we can do that for the area over where Carter Carburetor is. We can do that in the area of North St. Louis where houses and everything are. And so I have my concerns. I am happy. Anytime that, the mayor's office says they're going to do something, they follow through. She kept her word. I give her that. But when we take a look at saying that we could put a recreation center, didn't you say that it was contaminated? So if it's contaminated, why would you put a recreation center there? If it's contaminated, why would you consider putting even a memorial there? Why would, if it's contaminated, why would you put anyone in a situation where they would come in contact with a place that you say is contaminated? It doesn't make sense. And so that's the end of my comment, and I yield.
Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, I want to follow up with what the Alderwoman from the 11th was talking about, the different stages. I have dealt with the workhouse since 1989. And I was a public attorney with the Public Defender's Office, and I had clients there. Got elected here in 91, went up the ranks, and when I became the chair of public safety through my seniority, although people try to act like I wasn't here from 91 to 2012, I was. And we built the current Criminal Justice Center. When I was an attorney with the Public Defenders, we, being myself and Jack Garvey, who got elected as a 14th Ward alderperson in 1991, used to sit in with Durker, who was a judge then, and other judges, and wait for people to come in, people who were accused to come in from mid-Missouri because things were so far away. We, at that time, had a jail and we had a workhouse. When I got to be the chair of public safety, Clarence Harmon became the mayor, and we had talked about and had agreed upon we're going to build a criminal justice center. The end of that had gotten done, I think, at the end of Freeman Bosley's term. When we went to build the criminal justice center, we had all kind of problems with Ruth Chris Steakhouse, but we finally got it done. We never built it to be a long-term facility. And that's why it doesn't have the things that you need. The Alderwoman already talked about it. I talk about it all of the time. If you go to a grade school, they have outdoor space because people who are shut up all day need a place to let some of their energy go. That is double so when you talk about people who are incarcerated. So we now have people incarcerated downtown who are locked up for 20-some hours a day. It is inhumane. They should file a lawsuit against us. We moved the old police station that was on Clark. We moved over onto Olive across from the stadium, and we got room over there for things. But what we don't have, even there, is a place to exercise. One of the reasons, if you go to most places that have lockup facilities 1 year or shorter or a little 2 years, they're on the outskirts, and that's because the land was cheap and they had enough land to be able to let the people who are locked up be outside and do exercise. So that's why that is there. I want to thank the First Ward LA, which I'm going to steal next year from the First Ward Alderwoman. And because when I stood on the floor, I told her already, she knows it. I talked about us not having, someone talked about that the grounds were contaminated. And he sent me, thank you, he's so good. He sent me the report because I'd asked for it from the 14th Ward Alderman. And so I've worked with contaminated soil before and getting rid of gas stations and building a Walgreens. The contamination that people talk about is the contamination that you get from parking cars on a lot that's got rocks or grass, and you dig that up. It's not real contamination. To answer your question, if it was real, and I'm not saying that contamination is not bad, even that, but if it was really contaminated, they would not be talking about putting schools and things, because when we put the Walgreens at Natural Bridge and Kings Highway, we had to dig down. The gas station is a whole different thing. That's not that kind of contamination. I do know some people on the side of the Close the Workhouse because they came down here and I said no right off. I said, I'm not supporting this. This is crazy. No. One of the things that's a misinformation is that it's so far out there. The city runs from the chain of rock bridges to down past Carondelet Park. That is all part of the city of St. Louis. The Alderwoman from the 13th actually has the largest ward in the city because she represents from the chain of rocks all the way over to Page. Our wards are really messed up. But we meet right there by the workhouse, and Baden's down there, North Point, North Riverfront. There are neighborhoods. I get really irritated when I hear people talk about it's way out there and there's nothing there. It absolutely is something there. It's not. So homeless centers or homeless shelters or tiny houses don't get to be in the middle of town that costs the most land. It has to be a viable place to live that is clean. And this is a chance to use that facility, which I am still opposed to the workhouse being closed, to make that a example of what you can do. Atlanta has already done that on the outskirts of downtown with some, what do you call the things, the metal containers. And they put a whole section, and I actually have that, and I sent it to one of the persons who's on the Close the Workhouse. And so he sent back and said, well, this is really good. And I knew that. But the problem is, this is what nobody's telling the truth about. There is one person was on that Close the Workhouse, and he told me this, and I'm not going to say names, who was on that commission, that person was in the workhouse, and they had a bad experience. And they're pushing on a political agenda that would cost the taxpayers millions of dollars because one of their friends had a bad experience. Oh, my God. If we all did that, nobody would live in the city of St. Louis just about. That is a ridiculous criteria. And I told him that, and I said, I thought I had better respect for you than you to tell me that. And he said that, oh, well, it's so far out. And I said, I can't talk to you anymore because you don't know what you're talking about, okay? You're saying something to me like when people say, ooh, you live in North St. Louis. I probably live better than many of you all live in North St. Louis on a really nice street, really nice neighborhood. So that's a racism that's been perpetuated and now is being pushed by black people too. Oh, that's so far out. Where does it say that homeless people or unhoused get to live in the middle of the city. It is not a good idea for a whole bunch of reasons. But if we're going to tear down a building, which I think is just, I was shocked when I saw that yesterday, because I'm listening to the 14th Ward Alderman talking about, oh, we're pushing this, and I see your names on it. How would you all feel if it was something in your ward you hadn't even been talked to about, didn't ask to come sit down? It's actually all in the 13th Ward, but I abut it. And so you didn't talk to any of us who represent the area. This is what I'm talking about, why people don't trust what's going on in City Hall. What is the point? Whenever it's something about the convention center, you don't see Pam Boyd or myself, Alderwoman from the 13th, or myself bringing it. But here's people bringing, this is what should be done. And all these ideas, everything they say, put it right over there by your house. That's what I always tell people. But when I talk to people in my community, they don't want the workhouse closed. They want it open. Because if right now we are overcrowded down at the Justice Center, people are treated inhumanely. We are sending people to the middle of nowhere again, of the middle of Missouri. So we have done a 360-degree turn based on the fact that a person or two had a bad experience in the workhouse. Here's the idea. Don't do that crime that you did, then you won't have to be in the workhouse. But I'm going to take that back, because there are people in the workhouse that are innocent. In fact, all people, unless they have had a trial, are innocent. I believe that. I believe that with my heart. That's why I always cared about the people when I was the public defender. My first NOLI process, which was something that got dismissed, was with Hal Goldsmith about somebody in the workhouse. I care about that. I went to my house and got a phone and let him talk to him, because and everybody else said, oh, Sharon, take the plea. But when you're a new public defender, you're going to save the world. So but I got his case dismissed because he was innocent. I had a tenant who was in the workhouse who was also innocent. I actually had to go and talk to people about why wasn't his bail being set. In case you haven't been listening, I keep talking about that part of the reason we have so many locked up is we don't have a proper bail system. And so it came out right after I said it the last time about where the judges were being harder on bail. People are innocent until proven guilty. So except for the people who are the most worst crimes, the crimes in which human life or the likelihood, people deserve bail. If that's your brother or sister or cousin or whatever, you want them to have bail. My tenant was one of those people. And they held him for 4 months until I got involved. And then when I got involved, they said, ooh, Alderwoman Tyus. Then all of a sudden he got a bail hearing, but they set it for $500. I gave him $400. I gave his sister that because I knew he didn't do that. When we finally got the tape, it wasn't him that did it. It was the person who was accusing him had assaulted him. But 4 months he had been separated from his children. So I know that they are innocent people in that workhouse, or were in that workhouse. And they're innocent in the criminal justice center. And so just because you got a political agenda, that don't mean that it works. This is what I'm talking about. This push to celebrate madness, just total madness. We got it done. Never mind that it's messed up. If you ask most of the people in my community, should the workhouse be closed, they will tell you not no, but hell no, it should not be closed. And you ask the people who have to travel someplace else to see their loved one, they rather have the workhouse. And by the way, my tenant who was in the workhouse, when they brought him over to the criminal justice center because they were getting ready to get him out, he said, oh, Miss Tyus, because if I had to stay another day here, I'd rather go back to the workhouse. And that's what people used to tell us even at the workhouse. As an attorney, they would say, well, I want to go into middle Missouri because they got better places. I'm not saying the workhouse is perfect. What I'm saying is, in its imperfection, it served a purpose. And we don't get perfection in our city. And to be celebrating that we closed something, and we've seen all the problems that have happened at the Criminal Justice Center, that is not anything to celebrate. That's a mistake. And to then to announce that you're going to demo and spend $2 million, I'm going to give the mayor a hint. She's not going to listen. I've been an alderperson for 30-something years. Every person who lives next door to a vacant house that needs to be demoed, every person that lives next door to garbage that needs to be picked up in their alleys, every person who lives next door to grass that's not been cut, Those are voices that you're going to hear on election day, because they will not be voting for you if you spent $2 million to demolish a building that we spent any place from $15 million. It just depends. And that can be rehabbed. I actually have been doing rehab since 1979. I own property in which we rehabbed it and built new walls, put roofs on them, been House of the Month. They used to have House of the Month in the Post-Dispatch. The reason I'm so passionate also about criminal justice, but also about housing, is because that's what I wanted to do, and that's what we did since 1979. There's nothing that you can't clean up at that workhouse and make that up. You could have part workhouse where people are, you could have part unhoused. It's all kind of thing. It could be a campus. And for those of you all who are worried about what's not out there, first of all, you can go right down Broadway in my ward, and there is a bus station. Just bring the bus out there. Mayor can do that. She's the head of Gateway. Okay, so do that. It's already got cafeterias. It's already got nursing stations. It's got so many things. And for you all who don't own houses, have never done rehab, you can rehab. It is a mistake to tear this building down. We spent so much money, and it's a mistake to be celebrating something that was foolish and has not worked. The minute you saw all the people being hurt at the Criminal Justice Center, that should have been a hint. This is not a good idea. And privately, I will tell you, there are a lot of people who have said to me now, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have, that were with the closed workhouse that are no longer with it. And I also think it's a mistake that there has not been a conversation with the Alderwoman from the 13th and myself about that. And just to add that, in 2021, to add to the last thing, the Black Caucus sent the mayor a letter about unhoused and the homeless population. And we asked her to have a meeting with us to do some things. Alderwoman from the 13th was the chair. She sent it, but it was from 9 alderpersons. 8 on her letter, and then another one didn't sign in time, and he sent his in. We have yet to hear a response from that. We asked about, let's sit down and talk about how we can work together. So not to respond in 3.5 years and then come and say, I'm going to tear this down and not even have conversations with the people who represent it is a mistake. And I promise you, I picked up what used to be the 4th Ward. It's so much that needs to be demolished there. All of those people are listening and hearing that you're going to spend $2 million. All the people who have called me when I was the chair of streets and saying they weren't getting their trash picked up properly, you're going to once a week. And also for the workers. Let me go back to our city workers who did not get a proper raise. There are so many other things that are a priority. That building is not up against anything that's hurting anybody. But the other things that I just talked about are problems, and that's a mistake to demolish it. And I cannot celebrate a group of people who got together and had a decision based on 1 or 2 people who had a bad experience in the workhouse. If that would be the case, I would not be sitting back down here now saying, what you going to do to me now? Yet you redistrict me illegally, you took my seniority, yet here I stand. Because as there is a famous poem, and still I rise. If you do this, you are going to pay a political price, Madam Mayor.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Again, I share a lot of the concerns brought up by the Alderwoman from the 12th. I think it's important just to kind of reiterate that this resolution is not about the demolition. I have a lot of concerns about the demolition, as she brought up that there's facilities there that could be utilized. Certainly, we've spent an incredible amount of money on the building in between the time that people first were discussing the issues with the building and now. Additionally, when we were having the discussion about closing the workhouse, there was a very real discussion prior to ward reduction about having a second facility here, addressing the concern that we'd be throwing low security and medium security people into a high security facility where you may be waiting for several months for trial if you can't afford bail, or if bail's not granted, while you're technically an innocent person, that you could be waiting for a low-level crime, but be in a high security facility. So that means essentially for months you wouldn't see the sun, which is a problem. I've been a bit disappointed that in the meantime we have not had a real discussion about the quality of life for people in CJC, as opposed to modern low and medium security facilities. I think that's something that we discussed at the time at length, and then when we reduced from 28 to 14, that conversation just got lost in the shuffle, and I think that's unfortunate. But again, this resolution isn't about the demolition, which I do think we need to have a much greater discussion on. I think this is just about the mayor listening to the voices of for, in my opinion, all groups, whether they're for this, opposed to this, or want to see some different use for it, whether that's tiny houses, whether that's emergency shelter, whether that's an animal shelter, whatever it may be. But I anticipate further discussion on that, both in public safety and on this floor, and I welcome that discussion because ultimately the status quo isn't working. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 13th.
Thank you, Madam President. And I just wanted to be clear, this isn't about the demo part, and I know this resolution isn't about this, but I want our board to understand this is about not respecting the residents in the 13th Ward in regards to revision the workhouse, because I didn't find out that committee was even functioning until it was moving along for like 8 to 9 months. And then when I found out, they rushed and put a meeting together so those people in Baton could be a part. And guess what? They said, oh, we only had a couple of people from that community to show up, because you give them a 2 or 3 day notice that you're going to have this meeting. But as the Alderwoman in the 12th Ward said, people are calling me continuously and saying they can't shut this place down. This place needs to open because we have no room. And I keep hearing those people telling me the workhouse was inhumane. But Alderman Page and Alderman Bosley got on their knees and went through that building, and they said that building was not inhumane. But I got people locked up for 23 hours, some of them longer than that. 6 of them had died, and nobody sees that as being inhumane. I just think we as a board need to relook at what we're doing to people. I'm in agreement. The Justice Center is totally screwed up. But this closing and leaving it like that, and I don't know if people realize it's people's personal information in their building, and it's not secured. Their medical records in there, family pictures are in there. I just think people are not looking at what we're doing. This is not okay. It's not a celebration to me. This is a memorial service. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 8th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I had some questions from the alderman for the 14th, but I don't mind just kind of pontificating here for a second. I guess my first question was really, I mean, it seems to me this resolution is really calling on city leaders to continue to hear from the community on what happens in the future with the workhouse. Is that I guess my first question would be, would the alderman from the 14th yield?
The alderman from the 14th yield to questioning from the alderwoman from the 8th.
Yes, I will.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Alderman, it's my understanding that this resolution is calling on city leadership to continue to hear from the community on what should happen to the workhouse. Is that an accurate understanding of the?
That is accurate and that is factual, yes.
Okay. The recent announcement by the administration to demolish the workhouse, which it's my understanding the actual proposal by the mayor's office would be to demolish 4 peripheral buildings, and not actually the workhouse, but just sort of an annex, the watchtower, et cetera. Is that an accurate understanding of what was announced earlier this week?
I do not know the exact locations, but if we're talking about the resolution in front of us, it does not talk about the demolishment. Whatever came from the mayor's office, you would have to reach out to her to know the structures. This does not call for the demolishment.
No, I understand that exactly. Separately, though, the mayor's office did make an announcement this week that the administration has plans outside of this resolution to demolish, quote unquote, demolish the workhouse. But upon looking at those plans, or what was at least put forward on the city's website, it's my understanding that the administration plans to demolish 4 peripheral buildings that are on the property of the workhouse. In other words, a small percentage of the actual workhouse structure, but that there was a plan announced this week. And my question really was, were you or any members of the folks involved or pointed to in this resolution consulted or part of that announcement or that effort or that plan to do that work?
I cannot speak for every member of the Re-Envision campaign, but as I talked to some of them, and including myself, we were not aware of the announcement that was made public Wednesday, the day before the hearing Thursday.
Thank you, Alderman. What I find really unfortunate is that we have an effort to essentially hear from the community about what happens with this very emotionally charged, very harmful legacy of a building that the city owns and that has been used to house folks and been used to house folks in such a manner that we have had calls to close it. And I would say, the concerns and the actions and things that happen in the workhouse, really are, in my opinion, or what I can observe, very similar concerns to what we're seeing in our current jail facility. The fact that we are not allowing the oversight board officials in our currently operating detention facility, and that we are focusing on this as opposed to the real problem at hand, where people are in our custody, losing their lives on a fairly regular basis. I mean, this is deplorable and incredibly alarming. And we are having a call here, which I can really respect, that we continue to hear from the community on what to do with the workhouse and with our current incarceration facilities, and that the administration, in face of that, decided to move forward with their own plans without consultation with members of the Re-Envision the Workhouse community or folks that are not in favor of envisioning the workhouse, without consultation with really anyone. So I think really, we're at a really unfortunate set of circumstances here. Considering the resolution, which would ask to hear from the community, and it's pitted against actions that were completely outside of the work that was being done by this community and other members who have concerns. Meanwhile, we have a current incarceration facility that is operating in a very questionable manner, in a manner that none of us can really speak to because none of us are allowed in it. And yet we still know that there continue to be issues and harm being done to members of the public that are in our city's custody, and in our care while they're there. And so I am going to support this measure, which is, in my opinion, just clearly asking for city leaders to continue listening to the general public, but really turning back on the administration, asking what in the world, what are we doing with the folks that are currently in incarceration? And why are we not focusing on that deplorable, questionable, and quite frankly, very seemingly dangerous set of we have in the city's building downtown? Thank you, Alderman, for hearing me.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, I guess people don't hear what the Alderwoman from the 13th and I hear. I would like to know if we could have the resolution read, because I want you all to hear what's in this resolution about amending and redress harm and all of this stuff. This is not a simple a celebration of the committee, because the celebration of the committee also celebrates that you left out the two alder people that represent the area. How are you celebrating that? Because if anybody who votes for that, then we're going to come to your ward and tell you what should be done, and then we want to celebrate if somebody doesn't even talk to you about it. That's not a good process. That's what I said to one of the people. That's how I got the feedback that, well, one of our people, she was hurt in it, and she got something abuse in it, and so that's why we want it down. So that is not a good celebration. So can we read this resolution? If we cannot, I will read it into the record, because you need to hear what it says.
Alderwoman, the first thing that the alderman from the 14th requested when he brought it up was that it was read into the record.
And when was that?
At the beginning of this discussion.
I didn't hear it, so that's all right. Thank you. Okay, so what I want to remind people what this says. It says, the re-envisioning of the workhouse report was completed in January 2024. It talks about that as soon as she took office, she emptied the municipal jail in 2021. It does not talk about that she zeroed out the budget and then had to call the workhouse the annex, because they didn't know that when you own a piece of property, you still have to take care of it, okay? So that was the first thing. We emptied it out, we crowded people in, and then we said, oh, it's something wrong with the Criminal Justice Center. It's nothing wrong with it. It wasn't built to operate that way. It goes on to say, the Board of Aldermen continues to support the efforts and recommendations from the Re-Envision the Workhouse report, which include a variety of recommendations such as an animal shelter and a memorial hub. That's not celebration. No, we do not support that, and my community doesn't support that. And how does that affect you more than it affects where the people live over there? This is not a celebration of there is a group of people who got together. This is a celebration of advancing another cause that we don't support, and that is in actually our side of town where we live and represent. Let's see, it goes on to say, the Board of Aldermen recognizes the comprehensive analysis and recommendations presented in the re-envision of the workhouse report and supports its finding as a crucial step towards centering those that have been impacted by the general harm of the workhouse. It says that the Mayor Jones has agreed that it will never be a facility. Where is this at? Let's see. The Jones administration has confirmed that the site will not be used as another detention facility. That is assuming you get reelected, because the next mayor may not believe that that's the best thing to do. So that is something that she may have confirmed that, but that doesn't make that happen. The Close the Workhouse campaign has elevated 3 recommendations. Adopt the recommendations of the re-envisioning, the workhouse report, funding the Resource Memorial Hub, and to amend and redress harm done to those who were incarcerated at the workhouse. What does that mean? Redress and amend and redress those who were harmed. Again, the person who sits on that board was one of the people that says she was harmed. Conflict of interest that we have this in here. We seem to have a problem understanding about conflict of interest and appearances of impropriety at this board and on committees that we put together. This is what I'm talking about. When we put together committees that say what we want to say, not what actually we hear the committee. You talk about continuing to talk to people. You can't continue a conversation that was not started in certain parts of the community. You can't continue something and you're still trying to do just what you're doing with the charter. Oh, we hear you. Yeah, that was done wrong, but let's keep going. No, that was not a group of people. And when I spoke to the person I asked him, I said, so you're telling me this commission was put together, but none of us was put on it. Well, it was just for the people who were for close the workhouse. Well, if you're putting together the people who are closed for the workhouse, guess what the outcome is going to be? Close the workhouse. That doesn't mean it's in the best interest. It's certainly not in the best interest of the city. It's not in the best interest of the city financially. It goes on to say, the Board of Aldermen of the city recognizes the work of the Close the Workhouse campaign, the steering committee, the policy and process recommendations, the ongoing commitment of the Jones administration, and the advocacy of those impacted by the workhouse facility. The Board of Aldermen supports the adoption of the recommendation of the re-envisioning of the workhouse report, supports the recommendation. What are we going to have? If we're going to have a conversation, why are we supporting it? Why don't we say we further ask that there be more conversation so that we can make sure we're doing the right thing? No. The Board of Aldermen supports the adoption of the recommendation of the re-envisioning the workhouse report, funding the Resource Memorial Hub, and to amend and redress harm done to those who were incarcerated at the workhouse, and will continue to work with the Jones administration to bring those recommendations to fruition. So we have an unknown group of people who may have been harmed at the workhouse. And again, we're sitting here, as the Alderman from the 8th said, and we're talking about a closed facility. Are we also going to do that for all the people that we created the problem by stuffing them into a facility that was not meant to house them? So you are opening the door of something you really want to look at. But no, I am not supporting something that comes to a conclusion that we support something. You've not had good conversation with the people in the community. And I want to tell you, it's a way that you do things so that you leave people out. All young people say, let's do everything on the computer. Now, I actually am a techie, and I like technology, but so many of the people that I represent do not. So when I have ward meetings, they come in because that's how they operate. But you say, well, we got these people, we put it together, it's great, because you got a group of people who told you, oh, you look wonderful. And I encourage all of you all to read The Empire Has No Clothes, because it took a child, The Emperor Has No Clothes. It took a child to tell him he didn't have any clothes. He had clothes made that were not visible because they weren't really made. The tailor fooled him. And all the people around him said, oh, that was wonderful. This is a wonderful thing. And the child said, why doesn't the emperor have any clothes? Because the child told you the truth. When you surround yourself with people who already have a preconceived notion, that is not a committee. That's a false committee. I do not support it. We should not be supporting that. It should be asking for, admitting that that was a flawed process, and asking for more conversation. This is not doing that. So don't be fooled about what they're saying. This is confirming that what they did was right, and it is not.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Whew, I don't know where to start with all of the rhetoric and untrue things that was brought forward from some of my colleagues. First off, I do want to thank several of my colleagues from the 4th and the 8th that tried to bring us back to what this resolution is. Some folks brought up unhoused today who actually had the opportunity, who sits on the Public Safety Committee, to bring up those questions so that we can have that dialogue, so we can have those conversations, but waited to this very moment to do so. And that is not in the resolution. Some folks have not said they have not seen the report. The report is online. The way that I read it, there is parts of the land that is contaminated. So if you haven't read it, only thing you have to do as young folks, just go Google and you'll be able to find it. Again, this is about just ensuring that we listen to the community. We hear their input, and it's also interesting that we talk about not stepping in people's wards when there was legislation filed from an alderperson just this session to name a street in my ward that does not live in my ward. So as we continue to talk the talk, let's keep that same energy when we talk about unhoused. I'm glad that we are excited about it now and we want to find a place to put them, but when it's time, when we say in your ward, keep that same energy. But again, this resolution is saying we will listen to the community and the recommendations that they came up with so that no decision is made. We are not trying to force anything down people's throat. There's still a process so that you can pay attention and be aware of what's going on. This isn't the end-all, be-all, but this will allow for us at the Board of Aldermen to say that we support residents' voices and some of the recommendations that they came up with. So to the people that are watching, please make sure you read the recommendations or please read the resolution. It actually was read at the start of the meeting if we all was following along. But if you didn't, you can go online and you could be able to read the resolution and actually know what's in it and not just a lot of the rhetoric and fake news that was said at the Board of Aldermen from some of my colleagues. And with that, I close and move to adopt Resolution 57.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt Resolution number 57. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanier. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd.
No.
Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
10 aye votes and 5 no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman for the 14th to adopt Resolution number 57.
That's the extent of second reading of resolutions, committee reports, and adoption.
Hello.
Courtesy resolutions. Alderwoman from the 10th,
I
you'll
just
recognize.
wanted to request that my name be removed from the bill that we just discussed.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that.
So noted.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Miscellaneous and unfinished business.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 23, announcements.
Monday, September 23rd, Special Committee on Reducing Red Tape will have a hearing in the Kennedy Room at 3 p.m. Tuesday, September 24th, Transportation and Commerce, Kennedy Room at 9 a.m. Thursday, September 26th, Personnel webinar at 11 a.m. and Friday, September 27th, full board meeting in the chambers at 10 a.m. That's the extent of the announcement.
Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 10th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. You know, I have a lot, but I'm not going to do it out here. I'll do it later on live, but I do want to make sure that we announce, at the request of Director Neil Richardson, we will have an update on the North St. Louis Small Business and Nonprofit Grant Program Committee meeting on September 24th, this Tuesday at 11 a.m. Also, I want to announce myself along with Alderwoman, Alderwoman Boyd, we share this, she has the lion's share of this, but making sure that we talk about the public open house for the Goodfellow Boulevard, Delmar to Halls Ferry meeting at Pierre Laclede Elementary School, 5821 Kennerly. That's this Thursday from 4 to 7. You can just drop by. You don't have to be there from 4 to 7, which is important so you can come through and give your comments about what that's going to look like. And also just making sure that everybody knows sometimes some of us have on white, and that's in honor of Frankie Beverly. So I want to make sure we take our picture afterwards for the white out for Frankie. Thank you.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Just want to remind everyone, if they didn't know, Balloon Glow is tonight in Forest Park. It's free and fun, and it's just a really cool thing to see all the balloons that are going to be racing tomorrow light up at night. I would highly recommend it if you haven't done it before. On that same note, tomorrow will be the balloon race, which it's very cool to see a whole bunch of to stand and see a whole bunch of humans in baskets just start floating away. It's really neat if you haven't seen it before. And after the balloon race at the intersection of Clayton and Tam in Dogtown, there's going to be the Up Festival, which is the first one of these that'll hopefully turn into an annual tradition where there will be the street will be closed down, should be a party atmosphere, and the movie Up will be showing, which should be a fun time for everyone. So I would encourage you all to do any one or all three of those things. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 13th.
My colleague, Alderwoman Hubbard, thank you for reminding me about the event
27
for the 26th. But I want to remind, we'll have a health committee meeting on Thursday via Zoom at 9 o'clock.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Alderwoman from the 11th.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm so happy that we are celebrating Frankie Beverly. Such a tremendous talent lost to our world, but he gave us a whole generation of music. But I am a big Star Wars fan, so maybe we could bring our lightsabers next week, and then of course Tito Jackson died. Maybe we, do a Jackson 5 theme thing. Just a couple of thoughts, just throw it out there. But what I wanted to just bring some awareness is that there are a ton of small businesses throughout every ward in this city. Those businesses need to be supported. I was looking online the other day and I saw that there are like 3 businesses in a part of town, small businesses that are closing. In part, small businesses close because people are not coming out. And so I just want to rep particularly the 11th Ward, the elevated 11th Ward, and just throw a few things out there that people could go and support and help these businesses to survive. Chiefly is the Wilson's Hardware. We have a hardware in the 11th Ward on Grand Avenue, the old site of the Joe Becker's Hardware. They are completely retooled. All of your hardware needs, you don't have to travel to South St. Louis. You don't have to travel to surrounding counties. We can help you right there on Grand Avenue at the Wilson Hardware Store. There's King's Corner Store. They are a confectionery and restaurant that has been there for many, many years. There is also You Gotta Eat Here, personal friend of mine, my official caterer, Andre. Andre was a former committee man, and so we served together, but he had always been in the restaurant business. More familiar is the other business, Fat Burger. So he did Fat Burger's restaurant, and now he's got You Gotta Eat Here. Again, this is right there on Grand and Page in that little strip mall. Please patronize these places. Vales Brothers. The Vales used to be my neighbors. Their children were a part of my Christmas Carol choir, and we were featured on the front page of the Post-Dispatch one year at Christmas time. There's Grand Wigs. Go get your wig on. Go and get your beauty supplies at Grand Wig right there on Washington. Harry's Barbershop. Harry's has been there for decades, right there on Newstead. And so these are just a few of the small businesses. Carrie's Corner Market, been there for decades. So many small businesses in my community and in yours that need your support in order to survive. Please, members of the public who are listening, please go and support the small businesses in our city and especially where you live. Thank you.
Further announcements, Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to make note that there is a Transportation and Commerce Committee meeting Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. I will be in person. I kind of am inspired by my colleague from the 11th Ward and would like to start listing all of the business in the 3rd Ward, but I will save everyone perhaps next week. But I do want to make a very special announcement today. You all might have heard, but she said yes. So as we are talking about people in baskets floating away, our dear president of the board is now engaged. And I just want to... I want to offer on my part and hopefully on behalf of our entire body, our heartfelt congratulations on your engagement, Madam President.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I wanted to announce that there is a transportation and mobility open house tomorrow. I know that I have gotten a tons of questions about this plan and what's in the works. I know there's been a lot of conversation in media, so they'll be hosting their first open house at 5595 Grand Drive tomorrow from 11 a.m. to noon. I also wanted to announce and give an early congratulations to, from noon to 1. And then I also want to announce and give an early congratulations to Roosevelt High School, who has their homecoming game tomorrow. Rough Riders, let's get it. Y'all know what time it is. I also wanted to announce, and I'm sure Alderwoman Velasquez will as well, that there is the Frizz Festival tomorrow that really is about celebrating Black hair and specifically Black women's hair and inclusion and all of that. So I wanted to make sure that that was on their radar. It's an annual event every year. I love it. I might even take my braids down and rock the natural in honor of it. And then I also wanted to make a special announcement to my grandmother who was watching. She turned 75 recently. And so, Grandma, I love you. I love all of the communication that you sent to me while we meet today. Some of your comments were very spicy. Thank you for reminding me of the Constitution piece. And thank you for just being the best grandma ever, for paving the way, for all of the sacrifices that you made for myself and for my mother and just our entire family and the powerful matriarch that you are. And I hope that I can keep making you proud.
Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you, Madam President. There is a lot going on this weekend, so I'm going to try and get everything, but I may miss something. Obviously, this past week was the start of Hispanic Heritage Month. Today through Sunday is Hispanic Festival in Soulard at Soulard Park. If you're a big fan of Sesame Street, Maria from Sesame Street is going to be doing a Muppet show. I'm serious. At 10 a.m. tomorrow, but there's going to be a lot of events. Also in the 6th Ward, Frizz Fest starts this weekend too. I'll be out there tomorrow with some of my colleagues. That's exciting. And then we have a few different other ward-related events. On October 15th, with my colleagues from the 3rd and 7th Ward, we will be having a senior health fair jam at Marquette Dunn Recreation Center from 8:30 a.m. to noon. And then on October 23rd, my colleague from the 10th Ward and I are co-hosting a Storytelling for Healing Domestic Violence Awareness Town Hall. That's on October 23rd from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. at the Dogwood in the Grove. Thank you.
Any further announcements? Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'll keep it quick. One thing I forgot to mention during Board Bill 15 for sub, I also want to thank Cecilia Boyers from your office for helping on that legislation. We literally was running around today at the last minute trying to make sure everything was right. So I want to thank her and also the clerk and the staff always being patient and willing and supportive when there are hiccups. So thank you, Cecilia, and the staff of the board. And congratulations, Madam President, for saying yes.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you. I forgot two things. Number one, we do have a meeting for Botanical Heights neighbors at City Garden at 5:30 p.m. on October 7th. We just said it, so y'all know I'll be at your door soon with flyers to make sure you all know. But I know a few of you watching and tuned, so I wanted to make sure I say it here, tell your neighbors. We're just going to be discussing some of the traffic calming issues near the school and the residents. And then I also wanted to also send my congratulations to Madam President on her engagement.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. All members were present this morning.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I move that we adjourn until Friday, September 27th, 2024, in the Board of Aldermen chambers.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adjourn until Friday, September 27, 2024, in the Board of Aldermen chambers. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.